In the peaceful suburban neighborhood of Maplewood, life moved at a leisurely pace. Families gathered for barbecues, children played in the streets, and everyone knew each other by name. But the tranquility was shattered when Jenny Collins, a beloved member of the community, vanished without a trace. Jenny was a single mother raising her two young children, Tommy and Emily, in a modest house on Elm Street. She was known for her warm smile and kind heart, always willing to lend a helping hand to those in need. When she failed to show up for work at the local diner one morning, her friends and neighbors grew concerned. As news of Jenny's disappearance spread, the community rallied together to search for her. Volunteers combed through the woods surrounding Maplewood, while others plastered missing posters on telephone poles and storefronts. But despite their efforts, there was no sign of Jenny or any clue as to what had happened to her. Detective Mike Roberts was assigned to lead the investigation into Jenny's disappearance. Armed with a team of seasoned officers and a determination to bring her home safely, he delved into her background, searching for any leads that might shed light on her whereabouts. Weeks turned into months, and still, there was no sign of Jenny. But then, a breakthrough came in the form of a tip from a local fisherman who claimed to have found something suspicious in the nearby lake. Divers were dispatched to search the murky depths, and what they found sent shivers down their spines. Jenny's car submerged beneath the surface, with no sign of her or her children anywhere to be found. As the investigation intensified, Detective Roberts uncovered evidence suggesting foul play. Jenny's ex-boyfriend, who had a history of violence, became the prime suspect, but without concrete proof, the case remained at a standstill. It wasn't until a year later that a breakthrough finally came. A hiker stumbled upon a shallow grave in the woods, containing the remains of Jenny and her two children. It was a gut-wrenching discovery that sent shockwaves through the community, leaving them grappling with the harsh reality of what had happened to one of their own. Through painstaking forensic analysis, it was determined that Jenny and her children had been murdered shortly after their disappearance. The perpetrator was eventually apprehended and brought to justice, but the scars left by the tragedy would linger on for years to come. As Maplewood mourned the loss of Jenny and her children, they vowed to never forget their names or the senseless violence that had torn their family apart. And as they gathered to pay their respects at a somber memorial service, they found solace in the knowledge that Jenny's spirit would live on in the hearts of those who loved her, forever cherished and never forgotten. In the calm town of Maplewood, where life went by like a lazy river, something strange happened. Mrs. Jenkins, a friendly face in the neighborhood, suddenly vanished, leaving everyone puzzled and worried. She was the heart of the neighborhood, known for her warm smiles and kind words. But one day she disappeared without a trace, leaving the community in a state of confusion and worry. Mrs. Jenkins lived alone in a cozy house on Elm Street, where she tended to her garden and welcomed neighbors with open arms. When she failed to show up for her usual activities, concern rippled through Maplewood like ripples in a pond. Detective Tom, a seasoned investigator with a sharp eye and a keen intuition, was called in to find Mrs. Jenkins. With his team of officers, he combed through her house, searching for any clue that might lead them to her whereabouts. But the house was silent, revealing no secrets. As days turned into weeks with no sign of Mrs. Jenkins, tension hung heavy in the air. People whispered in hushed tones, wondering what could have happened to their beloved neighbor. Detective Tom worked tirelessly, following every lead, but the trail grew cold, like footprints in fresh snow. Then, one day, a breakthrough came. A witness reported seeing Mrs. Jenkins in the company of a suspicious-looking man on the day of her disappearance. The news sent a shiver down Maplewood's spine, and suspicions began to swirl like leaves caught in a gust of wind. Detective Tom tracked down the man and questioned him, but he denied any involvement in Mrs. Jenkins' disappearance. Still, there was something in his eyes, a flicker of guilt that Detective Tom couldn't ignore. With renewed determination, Detective Tom dug deeper, uncovering a web of lies and deceit that seemed to lead straight to the suspect's doorstep. Yet, without concrete evidence, he knew he couldn't make an arrest. days turned into months as Detective Tom worked tirelessly to gather the proof he needed. The weight of the case bore down on him like a heavy burden, but he refused to give up, knowing that Mrs. Jenkins deserved justice. Then, finally, the breakthrough came: a piece of evidence that tied the suspect to Mrs. Jenkins' disappearance. With a sense of grim satisfaction, Detective Tom made the arrest, bringing the suspect to justice and bringing closure to Maplewood. As the trial unfolded, the chilling truth emerged: the suspect, driven by jealousy and rage, had confronted Mrs. Jenkins in a fit of anger, leading to a violent altercation that ended in tragedy. The suspect had struck Mrs. Jenkins with a heavy object, causing fatal injuries, before disposing of her body in a secluded area of the woods. But even as Maplewood grappled with the aftermath of Mrs. Jenkins' disappearance, the community came together to honor her memory, vowing to never forget the kindness and warmth she had brought to their lives. And as they gathered to pay their respects at a somber memorial service, they found solace in the knowledge that justice had been served and Mrs. Jenkins could finally rest in peace.